Seeing a or witnessing orcs having raging hard-ons is certainly not what people want to see on screen, but LGBTQ+ fans have been let down by Amazon's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. How have the showrunners failed LGBTQ fans, and why did they do so? These, and much more, are the things you'll find out in this video, so make sure you stick around till the end. First, here's what you need to know. The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, is an American fantasy TV series based on J.R.R. Tolkien's novel, The Lord of the Rings, and its appendices. The setting of the series is the Second Age of Middle-earth, thousands of years before the events of The Hobbit. The series is primarily based on the appendices of The Lord of the Rings and was never intended to be a continuation of The Lord of the Rings and Hobbit film trilogies. Despite this, the idea was to evoke the memory of those films by using similar production designs, younger versions of the characters in the films, and a main theme by Howard Shore, the same person that composed the music for both trilogies. The TV rights for the development of its 5-season production were bought by Amazon back in November 2017 for at least $1 billion, making it the most expensive TV series ever made. The first 2 episodes of its 8-episode first season premiered on September 1st, 2022, setting the record for the most views of a Prime Video premiere. The series has, since its release, generally received positive reviews from critics, and there have been divided opinions about the series' way of addressing the need for diversities and inclusions that have recently been a major topic in the cinematic world. In Lord of the Rings. The imagination of LGBTQ+ fans has been made to run wild for decades, looking at the several queer-coded relationships that existed in Middle-earth in the Lord of the Rings films. The most notable of them was perhaps that between Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee. You're probably thinking about the fact that their relationship was never clarified or clearly stated in words. And yeah, that's true, but the multiple kisses, lots of tenderness and mushiness, and the fact that these hairy little guys end up in the afterlife together suggests that they most likely rubbed their giant tootsies under the sheets each night. Ian McKellen, who played Gandalf in the trilogy and had publicly announced his 1988, says he's no longer the only member of the cast who has gone public like he was back when the films were first made. He even suggested that Gandalf's character in the films was probably gay. And honestly, Gandalf did seem to be quite a Gandalf wasn't the only character that appeared to be In fact, most of the characters were like that too, in a sense, because when it came to everyone's favorite ring, lust and other sensual desires were relegated to mere symbolism. But the weighted looks that many of the lead characters of same shared between themselves certainly hint at something more carnal, or at least open themselves up to queer interpretations. A scene that was never filmed. Peter Jackson's team for Lord of the Rings trilogy was actually very much aware of the homoerotic undertones of the epic tale. The film's directors, Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan, once revealed that they almost shot a scene in which cheeky hobbits Merry and Pippin are found naked after falling from Ents branches and losing all their clothing. According to the script, Merry then turns to Pippin saying, "It's cold, isn't it?" while Pippin turns to him saying, "Hold me, Merry." The fact that this scene was never filmed doesn't matter. Viewing the male-centric events of Lord of the Rings through a 21st century lens, or even a 1930s one, the bonding, their emotional connections in the face of danger, and their apparent torment at choosing between heterosexual romance and the company of other men all obviously have queer connotations. What were LGBTQ fans' expectations, or fantasies, in the Rings of Power? Those burning looks between same-sex characters, Frodo's deviation from what we typically know as a masculine hero, and Legolas's bleached gay crisis hair were some of the reasons why queer fans loved Lord of the Rings so much. And upon learning of a prequel series based on the story being in the works, they were already anticipating how the new series would continue its generations-long inspiration of the queer folk. Rings of Power was to feature new characters, and with its extensive lore, LGBTQ fans were waiting with bated breath to see if Middle-earth would finally explicitly parade its first set of queer denizens. One fan of the trilogy said she discovered the films when she was 5 and that it had been a pivotal part of her life. The fan, who identified herself as A, said she considers Lord of the Rings to be so precious because it's about everyone finding their place and contributing their quota towards a valiant cause. Miss A also revealed how she always wanted to visit Middle-earth since she knew it was a place where she would be accepted. She's not the only one who found a home in J.R.R. Tolkien's world, as another fan, Beatrice, says that returning to Middle-earth is like a homecoming for her, especially when her own home wasn't the most welcoming place. So many fans were seriously hoping that the new series would platform queer stories upon its release and make them feel accepted. Rings of Power fails LGBTQ fans. Audiences love when their stories are told in films, and this was the case with many queer fans hoping that Rings of Power would find space in its rich and expansive mythos to include some queerness and stop hiding behind the trees with mere illusions. They wanted the story to reflect their world. Just the acceptance that they were here and that their stories were just as valid as anyone else's was all they wanted. And really, in a world where dragons are portrayed as real, where trees can walk and talk, how hard would it be to believe that queer people do exist? On the surface level, Prime Video's expensive and long-awaited prequel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy failed to continue that tradition of queer inclusiveness. Though the series diversified the race types found in Middle-earth by casting actors of color, there was no queer representation. This broke the hearts of loyal Lord of the Rings fans who belong to the LGBTQ community, leaving them to settle for making assumptions about some of the characters being gay when what they really desired was an explicit inclusion of queer characters. Rings of Power Season 1 character with queer suggestiveness. Despite the lack of explicitness, thirsty gay fans have not allowed that to stop them, and they think that Elrond, the elf played by Robert Aramayo, might be gay. And truly, his impeccable way of dressing eludes straight men. Then, there's that gay best friend vibe that we see anytime he chats with Galadriel. But the main reason why fans think Elrond might be gay is because of the friendship he shares with Durin. The elf and the dwarf king are probably at the center of this show's most likable friendship. Even though Durin has a wife he loves very much, the affection these two men have for each other definitely has an air of Frodo-Samwise sort of relationship. And then, who says Durin can't be bisexual? Is there hope for LGBTQ+ fans as the series progresses? The Durin-Elrond relationship could be platonic, but it could also be something much more. Every time they come together, the screen lights up with suspicions of this nature. And then, that scene from episode 5 of the first season happened. Did we hear Durin say, "Give me the meat and give it to me raw," to Elrond? Is there any straight guy who would say that to his bestie? Such a guy would surely need to do some soul-searching and reflection. Of course, I'm joking, kind of, but one cannot just ignore a subtext this blatant when it's obvious that this is fighting so hard to become text. Those in the writer's room sure knew what they were doing with that line. It wasn't a mistake. They're probably watching to see if fans would take a liking to it, and perhaps we'll see something develop from this along the line. It is possible that Elrond and Durin share a sexy past way before Durin's wife, Disa, came into the picture. So, there yet might be hope for queer fans who are rooting for Elrin, or, as more nasty ones would prefer, Durand. But for now, the closest we've got to an LGBTQ pairing in the Amazon series is that line from Durin, and it is barely even implied. Why has the series failed to feature queer characters? Considering that this is 2022, there's no reason why LGBTQ characters shouldn't be in Rings of Power. And though the producers haven't said anything as regards why this is so, some say it's an attempt on the part of the show developers, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, to stay true to the source novel by J.R.R. Tolkien, whose Roman Catholic faith made him leave out queer suggestiveness. So guys, do you think Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, fails LGBTQ+ fans? Let us have your thoughts in the comments section. And if you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a like and share. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tap the notification bell to stay updated with more interesting news like this. See you next time.